Major changes for Alaska cruises, a nightmare onboard experience, and what's ticking off Carnival passengers. We're going to talk about those for your cruise news today, Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Jordan with Beyond the Dock, and we have your cruise news, so let's dive right in. First up, we have a conflict with Alaska. U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan is pushing to let Alaska-bound cruises bypass Canada. Now, he's asking to either remove the Passenger Vessel Services Act of 1886 or to have an exemption made where foreign flagged ships from the U.S. can port at another U.S. city without stopping in Canada. So this was a law that was put into place to keep French ships from transporting Americans from one state to another. But this law also applies to cruises because most cruise ships flag under a different country than the US. So currently, Alaskan cruises that port out of California or Seattle or wherever they may start have to stop in Canada before they can finish their cruise. This is coming about because of the conflict that's happening. The US will do something, Canada will respond. So the US responds, and then it just continues like that until someone else or some other group will step in and say, okay, enough is enough, but we're not getting into politics. So this would help Alaska because more cruise dollars would go to Alaska rather than a few of those dollars stopping in Canada. This would affect Canada because ports like Vancouver and Victoria wouldn't have those cruise ships stopping potentially. And this could affect the local economies, although the effects won't be quite as dramatic because Canada doesn't necessarily rely on tourism. For cruise lines, I don't know if this will change itineraries or not. I think some passengers like stopping in Canada just because many of them haven't been to Canada before and they want to say they've been. And it's another chance to get off the ship, so who knows? But what do you think? Would you still book an Alaskan cruise if it didn't stop in Canada? Or tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I'm interested to know. I've never been on an Alaskan cruise yet. I don't have a say that way, but I would prefer to stop in Canada as well. So what will happen next? The proposal that Senator Dan Sullivan has proposed hasn't passed. So as of right now, everything is remaining as is. If it is approved, it's likely that Canada will respond in some way, and who knows what will happen from there. Would it make Alaskan cruises cheaper? Probably not, but there is that possibility. Depends on the demand, of course. If there is still high demand, if this does pass, prices most likely will not change. If demand drops, then prices would have to come down to fill up their ships. So for now, we don't have to worry about it. Nothing is changing, but just keep that in the back of your mind as it is a potential change that could happen. Next story is a sewage disaster on board Disney Magic. Sewage backed up and passengers reported sewage seeping up through the carpet. This happened on deck 6, and there were no available cabins for passengers to move to a cleaner cabin. Crews quickly cleaned up the mess. They had fans going for a couple of days. Still though, that's pretty disgusting. I can only imagine the smell and having to stay in a cabin that had sewage backed up in it. So at this point, we don't know what passengers were given as a compensation for the sewage backup. Previously, when this has happened, the passengers got $150 onboard credit and some free snacks. So it's not likely they will get their cruise refunded, but we'll continue following that story to find out. This does raise concerns about the ship's plumbing and maintenance. Now, the ship is the oldest in the Disney fleet. It debuted in the 90s, and it did just have its routine maintenance completed in 23. So it's been on schedule and kept up to date like it should. Disney does have a couple more ships coming out next year, and then they have plans for 4 more ships in the following years. So it's possible that Disney may retire this ship in the future because it is old, but Disney does maintain their ships well, so it's still in pretty good condition. Now, as you can imagine, sewage getting backed up or overflowing causes some severe health issues and concerns. So that's why the crew quickly cleaned this up, because if they did have a lot of passengers fall sick due to the sewage, they would have to quarantine the ship and they couldn't complete any more sailings until after quarantine was over. So sewage backups are pretty rare, but they do happen. If you ever experience anything out of the ordinary, make sure you let the crew know so they can take care of any issues right away. Our last story is coming from Carnival. Brand Ambassador John Heald recently posted on Facebook some concerns that passengers have. There's a couple of things. First off, he gets a lot of complaints from passengers after they've finished their cruise. And when he investigates these complaints, he finds out they never filed any complaints on board. So there was nothing they could do to resolve it. And some of these issues could easily be resolved, like they had a complaint about food being overcooked, or a passenger smoking on their balcony, or any other thing similar to that that could be taken care of right away. So he's just asking, if you see an issue, let the crew know. They've been trained to help. Some other questions coming up from Carnival, and this I'm sure applies to all cruises, is due to the conflicts with the US and Canada, some passengers are worried that they will be treated differently on board a cruise. I've personally never experienced anything like that, or have noticed anything where people have been treated differently because they're from a different country. Well, there was one example when I was on MSC. It's an Italian-based ship, so there were a lot of Italians on board. And I went to go look over the side of just the railing to see off the side of the ship. And someone started yelling at me in Italian. I don't know if they were cussing me out or they were just asking me how my day was, but I don't know, I just gave them a confused look and then walked away. But I don't think they were treating me differently because I didn't speak Italian. They probably didn't even know, because others would come up to me and start speaking Italian. Who knows? What kind of complaints have you heard about, or do you have about cruises? Have you ever heard of any crazy complaints? Let me know in the comments below. I'm interested in hearing about those. So to wrap it up, would you still take an Alaskan cruise if Canada wasn't one of the stops on the itinerary? Well, let me know in the comments. And as always, like and subscribe and hit that bell if you found this video helpful or informative and want to keep up to date with other videos that we put out. And until next time, my name is Jordan, and we will see you as we travel beyond the dock. Happy cruising.